Welcome to this episode of the More People podcast. I'm your host, Richard Hanwell, Managing Director for More People. I'm thrilled this time round to be joined by Rebecca Wilson. Welcome.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming. Rebecca, very keen for you to intro yourself before I jump into questions.
Well, I'm Rebecca Wilson and I am a mixed farmer in North Yorkshire, and I also dabble a little bit in Instagram and very, very shortly a new podcast as well. So it's a bit different beyond this side. Oh yeah, Wilson and Ashley, okay? Wilson and Ashley, you'll find it online. But obviously listen to this one too.
Definitely. First, you've obviously got that very natural link from a degree in politics into farming. Run us through how that came around.
Do you know what? Actually, it's something I say when I give a presentation or a talk. Right, this isn't a well-trodden route, so it's not normal, because I actually went to Cambridge, then Cirencester. So if you know either of those two universities, they're known for quite different things, I would say. But I was actually very much encouraged by my parents to go and do something completely different to farming. And I think, we're seeing it now, unfortunately, in the agricultural sector, but it's not very well paid. It's really quite challenging. And to go and do something else actually gave me job security, a good degree, and let's put it bluntly, a chance to earn more money than I do on the farm at home. And I think actually looking back, it was my first kind of exposure to consumers and the public and people who hadn't really grown up in the countryside and grown up in farming. So looking back, it's interesting to see those conversations for what they were, which was a farming perspective versus a non-farming perspective.
Yeah, hugely educational for you, which you can kind of put into today's world as well. You did have a more corporate role at one stage, am I right in saying?
Absolutely. So I worked for a company which specialised in, I guess, representing utilities. So we dealt with compensation claims, compulsory purchase, things like that. But for me, I didn't really like working against the farmer. That's how it felt. And albeit, to be fair, we worked really kind of complementary alongside landowners and the utility companies. I kind of felt like I was on the wrong side.
Okay. Interesting.
And actually, I wanted to get back into something more farming.
What are the biggest challenges you're facing at the minute in the world of farming?
It's a massive, massive question. And I hate to say that there's a lot, but there are.
Triage them, yeah.
Exactly. I think obviously the natural thing which most people would go to is policy and government decisions at the moment, which feel pretty anti-farming. But I think they've been talked about a lot. I think the risk to the livestock sector in terms of biosecurity, disease pressures, things like resistance, sourcing vaccinations and drugs, perhaps isn't talked about enough. We see kind of scares and headline scares, which, hit the mainstream media. But I think we're always working with an undercurrent of what's the next big threat. We've just seen fairly recently that a sheep got infected with bird flu. Now we hope it's an isolated case. Yes. We've seen foot and mouth spreading across Europe. And also sheep farmers and cattle farmers have been blighted by things like Schmallenberg and blue tongue, which are spread by midges. And if we add that into changes in climate, getting warmer, are we going to see more of that? So it's not as spoken about. It doesn't hit the headlines, but I think that's a day-to-day worry, which particularly livestock farmers are dealing with.
I had the privilege of being down at the Guildhall recently for the City Food and Drink Lecture. Fantastic speech by John Shropshire, about farming in 2040 with success. Yes. I think the second question was, will we be farming in 2040? Yeah. What's your take on that? What's your kind of takeaways?
It's really hard, and I genuinely have the conversation, should I have returned back to the family farm? And this is the nature of family farms in particular, in that there's a sense of duty and responsibility. And I think even if you are a new entrant, as soon as you start looking after land and animals, you feel a responsibility to it. So farmers want to be farming, continuing what we're doing, improving what we're doing. Financially, it is unsustainable to carry on like this. Some sectors are, at the moment, we're seeing really strong beef prices in particular, but costs have gone up in line with that. It's not all pure profit. No. And I think the financial element is very, very worrying. So, we can talk about, will the land be and the climate be how it is now? But I think people, the sustainability of people is very, very important, because quite simply, people do need a work-life balance, even if they're farming. People do need a sustainable wage. And I think it's very hard because on my social media, I'm trying to showcase the highs, lows, and everything in between of farming. If it's mostly lows, and I'm saying, but yeah, get into farming, it's a great career. Is it? Are we selling a false reality?
It's a tough one, isn't it? Because the lows are really low.
Yes.
And you've kind of got to live and breathe it to kind of sift through to the actual highs and
Yes.
really care about it from that perspective. But as an island, we're very self-sufficient, right? And we should be hugely proud of that.
Yeah.
But in order to continue that, we've got to make farming profitable.
The interest we have in farming and food at the moment is kind of like nothing we've had before. You know, people love to visit farms. People mention Clarkson's farm to me all the time.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, you know, whether it's accounts, you know, from farmers who are showing that reality, there's an interest there. And I think we absolutely have to capitalise on it. I spoke at a kind of teacher conference a few months ago, predominantly food technology teachers, but some involved in science. And their appetite was there to learn about farming, learn about the sustainable food that we're producing, and then obviously how that translates to what they teach their students. But the scope isn't really there, the room in the curriculum, the time, you know, the resources. Kind
of begs the question of where does it start? Because we talk about educating children about opportunities in the food industry, the fresh produce industry, the ag industry, farming, etc. But they have to return home to tell mum and dad have to be in a position where they don't shut those ideas down, because the perception is it's not well paid, it's overly stressful. Where do we start? Do we start with the adults? Do we start with the children, the teachers? I guess the answer's a bit of everything.
Everything. I think, though, as farmers, we can be probably too scathing of consumers. It's easy for us to say, oh, well, why don't you just buy British or buy local or buy what's in season? But the public, consumers, they go into supermarkets. We know people are in a rush. We know they are often looking for the cheapest option. And we can't, as farmers, judge people for not making the decisions that we would perhaps make, but perhaps we have the luxury of making them in terms of knowledge, and also the fact that, you know, we can get a lamb and we can send it to the abattoir and get a whole lamb back in our freezer, you know, and the cost is almost absorbed by the farm. You know, we're in a very different position. So I think the judgment of consumers is, and it's getting better, but we can't blame consumers for some of their decisions.
How have you found utilising social media channels?
I think the first thing to note is that agriculture, it might feel kind of behind the times compared to other sectors. And that's because it is, but it doesn't mean there aren't ambitions. For me, and it's been said before, but we want young people to be able to see somebody like them in the industry, you know, and stereotypes of farmers. Well, farmers aren't me, a 29-year-old girl, are they?
So someone to aspire to.
Yeah, exactly. So we need people to be able to see themselves there. And actually, you know, as a female farmer, you might be there 1 minute, you know, top to toe in waterproofs and overalls, but the next thing you're going to a young farmer's doing, you've got your hair done and your makeup done, and you can do both. Being a farmer doesn't mean that you have to forego all the other things that you enjoyed or all the other things that, you know, other girls do or whatever. So being able to see yourself is important. I think the one thing that we can do on social media as farmers in a way that other kind of campaigns or organisations don't do is show things literally as they happen. There's no room for kind of the message being corrupted by other organisations. We're saying what happens, and, you know, I'm hopping on that tractor, then I'm going to sort that sheep, then I'm taking lambs to market, then I'm coming to record a podcast. You know, we can show that you can do it all. So yeah, I think it's important to show the reality, because it isn't all fluffy. I think if we showed everything, you know, I love
authentic.
I love a picture with a cute lamb as much as the next person, but I also find it important to talk about the fact that that other lamb in the pen next door, we've done everything we can for it, and that lamb's died, or we've done everything we can to get that crop in the ground at the right time, but it's failed. I think if we make too fluffy a picture, people, you know, are not equipped to come into the industry because they think it's something that it's not.
What happens if we can't make it profitable?
One of the main things in terms of farming not being profitable is labour, in terms of things will be done by the family, taking no money out of the business, just surviving. So I think that means that there isn't as much of a gap for people to come in and work. The jobs aren't there. Plus, you've got to add in the kind of farmers pushing to be as efficient as possible, and that might be investing in a slightly bigger machine, not not an extra member of the workforce. And that's something that we've done on the farm at home to try and make our machinery the best we can afford, so that you don't need another person to come and sit on another tractor to do that job. In terms of actually how do we make it more profitable, farmers are obviously price takers on the whole. Some people are able to sell direct, but the amount of food that we've got to move means, you know, we can't all set our prices. With that in mind, the supply chain has a massive role to play in terms of fairness throughout the supply chain. To get there, I think there's two things: transparency from supermarkets, retailers, etc. But it's also about farmers having a real eye on knowing their costs. If you take your lambs to market and say, oh, it was a good trade this week, but you don't know how much it cost to get your lambs there, was it a good trade or not?
Exactly, yeah.
And actually, if as farmers we can, as a united front, get involved in whether it's benchmarking, all of those things, getting your farm business management straight, we can then actually accurately say that price covered cost of production by what? A pound a head? Or did it cover, did I make £10 of profit on each lamb? Or did I make a loss? I think we can be, as farmers, blinded by a good price at market, or, you know, if you're saying dead weight or whatever, but actually not necessarily know. And it's a bit different in a sector such as poultry. Obviously, after the egg crisis, they are now, many of them, in contracts where they have to cover the cost, the retailers have to cover the cost of production. But that came because as an egg supplier, they do have their handle on their costs, probably more than, you know, somebody with sheep raking around the hills and raking around the fields, and in this, you know, on that holding, the other holding. So I think, farmers have to take some accountability in knowing where they stand in their business. And it's not just sticking a finger up in the end thinking, oh, I think it's about that. No, let's work on the numbers ourselves.
Yeah. And are there opportunities for farmers to work collaboratively? Is there an opportunity to share that data and come together as one? Because it sounds like there's almost an educational need there to know your numbers, but I can only think it'd be better the more data you get, the more facts you'll find.
Absolutely. I mean, on the farm at home, we're part of a benchmarking group, and it's been absolutely brilliant to be part of. It's only as good as the data which people submit, which kind of improves year on year when you know what's being asked of you. But there are some barriers to that in terms of, actually, a lot of this data is inputted online, on apps, etc. So one, you're relying on people being able to use phones and iPods and laptops. But two, silly things like the Wi-Fi and the connection. If you are in a place where you don't have that connectivity, people aren't going to do it. They don't have the time to wait for that sort of stuff. So there's a whole host of issues which go into data, but is absolutely vital. And across all of the sectors, data is completely crucial. And we don't want to be left behind in farming, because that data then informs the developments we need, the innovations we need. And, you know, if there's a problem, there'll probably be some technological solution out there, but we just haven't addressed it yet.
If you had one hope for farming for 2025, what would it be?
Do you know what? At the moment, it's very hard for many people to see beyond this governmental period of their businesses surviving, depending on the structure.
Is there a general belief you're not being listened to?
Yeah, 100%, because how many times have we taken our arguments to mainstream media, the public, social media? Farmers have sat down with government. Even Labour's own backbenchers are saying we need a pause or a reassessment or a clawback, and government aren't listening. But on that, I think it's important to say that it's not just farmers who aren't being listened to. It's business. It's business across the whole country, which isn't being listened to. So I think it's a scary time. But to go back to your what do I hope for 2025, an optimistic question. You've always got the silly things around. We want the weather to be good for that time period, whatever. We're probably going to be upping our sheep numbers. The sheep on the farm, and myself and my sisters, that's kind of our project. We invest in the best quality breeding stock we can, but that means that the build is slow. You know, we can't afford to go out and buy 200 sheep and, you know, double our numbers. But actually, for me, the process is in sourcing the best stock, finding it, and then doing the best job. As soon as it gets on your farm, it's our job then to look after it, enhance, improve, maintain condition, and then produce some blooming good lambs at the end of it. So that's my hope for 2025.
That's your hope, no pressure.
Yeah.
Super. It's been an absolute pleasure having you, and I hope we can collaborate again soon.
Perfect,
Thank you, Rebecca.